Alright everybody, so today we're going to be learning about your final project. You should have already gone through and read through this PDF so you have an idea of what it is. I'm just going to use this video to just talk more in depth about what the project is and talk about some stuff that's not listed on the project sheet. So, the first thing that we want to talk about is what exactly is the overall thing of the project. So the project, you're going to come up with some question that you want to answer that you can answer by collecting data and then looking at the analysis of that data. You're going to see that this is a really good way to summarize everything that we've learned and tie together everything we've learned so far this year. So the outline, first thing you're going to do is identify a research question. Then you're going to collect your data. It says observational study or experiment, but you could also use a survey. You can analyze, after that you analyze your data, both graphically and numerically. Then second, you perform inference, which means you're performing a significance test. And using that, you're going to answer your research question. And then lastly, you're going to present your findings in a written analysis. Alright, so your requirements for your project, you should have a title page, okay? And like it says up there, you could either do like a Word document, a paper, which would probably be the easiest. I probably recommend doing that, but you could also do a video or a PowerPoint. So you want to have a title page no matter what you do. And then second, have an introduction. So introduction, you're going to describe what your project is by discussing your question of interest, why you chose it, and then how you collected your data and how you plan on analyzing that. Then a summary of your experiment or observational study or survey. So basically, how did you collect all of your data and putting your raw data points there. Then performing a summary of your data points. So for that, you're going to be running like one variable stats on your calculator and writing all your summary stats you want to include. So you want at least one form of center, mean or median, then a form of spread, standard deviation, interquartile range, and then you can also include other statistics along with that. And then also you want to make sure that you're including a good graphical representation. So it would be a scatter plot. If it's bivariate data, if it's just one variable data, you could do like a dot plot or a histogram or a box plot. So a lot of different things that you can do. Just make sure you display your data graphically. And then the second thing you want to do, again, on that section is perform your significance test. So do a full significance test with the data that you collected, and that's going to answer your question. So, for example, if your question was, are students in Cambridge taller than students at Overton High School, then depending on what your results are, from your p-value, your significance test, you'd be able to answer that question. So, like it says at the beginning there, the ultimate goal for this project is kind of for you to see all the different connections throughout the year and how you'd use this to come up with an in-depth study of real-world data. Okay? It's also a really great way to help study for a p-test because during this project you're tying in about half of the different concepts that we've done so far this year. Now, this next part is kind of like a checklist of everything you need to include. So as you're going through your project, I would just make sure you have all these components so you're not missing anything. I'm not going to read through them all because you should have already read through it. But again, the main components, you have your research question, then you collect your data. Then you have your exploratory data, analysts. So that's your coming up with your summary stats, your dot plot, box plot, stem and leaf plot, one of those types of summary graphs. And then your inference after that. So coming up with your significance test, full significance test, and then lastly, they come up with a final kind of write up on your reports. Okay. At the bottom it says you and your partner will present your class to the class in 10 to 15-minute presentation. You're going to work on this individually, so you're not working with a partner, and you're not going to do the presentation component to it. All right, but your final analyst should be around 300 words. I'm not going to count every single word on it, but you want to make sure it's really concise, but you're also being really detailed. I'm talking about more about what that detail is going to look like on this next section during the talking about the project proposal. So the project proposal is really like the first part to this project. It's going to be really important that you spend time on this and turn this in, because if you do the project without turning this in, you might not have a good question, you might not have a good way to collect data, and then your whole project's going to be flawed. So your whole study is going to be flawed. So you want to make sure that you do this proposal and send it to me. And I want you to send this to me, as you saw on the website, at the beginning of the class on Wednesday. But this is a long period for today, so you should have the entire class period to finish this. So going through the proposal, the first thing is you want to come up with a research question. So what do you intend to answer through this project? So when you're coming up with your question, first you want to pick something that's interesting for you, because you're going to spend a good amount of time on this project. So you want to do something that you're actually interested in doing, right? So pretty much any possibility, tons of limitless possibilities on what you could do. Last weekend I actually just started like a little kind of study on my own, doing some analysis of NBA drafts the last 20 years. Okay, so that's something that you could do. Just pick something that you're passionate about and do a study with that, because it's going to make the project a lot easier. Then also for your research question, you want to make sure it's a question that you can answer in a significance test. So think that through. Like, how would you collect the data for this, and how would you make a significance test from this question? So a good example would be if you said, are the male students at Cambridge taller than the female students at Cambridge? That's a research question. And then you could collect your data by collecting the heights of different students, and a good sampling method, and then comparing your results. Now, when you're doing a research question, you want to think about how it connects to eventually what your hypotheses are going to be. So if I said, my question was, are males at Cambridge taller than females students? Then my null hypothesis would be the mean of the males is equal to the mean of the females, and my alternative would be the mean of the males is greater than the mean of the females. So that's how you go through, and you want to think through how to make that connection between your research question and your hypotheses that are eventually going to do. If you're not 100% sure on how to make that connection, or if it's going to work, just email me and I can give you some guidance if it does work, and if it doesn't, maybe some ways we can kind of tweak your question to make it work with the project. Another thing you want to think about is you want to make sure it's a question that you can collect data from in a easy way. All right, so for example, if you did want to do some question where it's asking the opinion of U.S. congressmen, that's probably going to be a hard way to, you're probably going to have a hard time collecting data, just be able to get responses from U.S. congressmen, okay? But if you're surveying seniors at Cane Ridge, that's going to be a lot easier to do, right? So you want to make sure that you're thinking through, how am I going to collect data, and is this going to be a reasonable way to collect data in about the 3 weeks I have to do this project. So next you want to have your inference procedure. So what's your parameter of interest? So what's the what does the mean or proportion or slope represent that you're trying to do your test for, and what tests you are going to use. So you have 5 different significance tests that you can use. You could do 1 sample proportion, 2 sample proportion, 1 sample mean, 2 sample mean, and then your slope test that we just went through last class for the scatter plot regression lines. Then also under that, you want to make sure that you write your hypotheses, so your appropriate null and alternative hypotheses. And lastly, what type of study is it going to be? Is it an experiment, observational study, or a survey? And then be very specific about how you're going to collect your data. So you can't just say, I'm going to measure the heights of 50 male, 50 female students at Cane Ridge. You need to be specific about how you're going to select those 50 people. We want to try and incorporate randomization into our selection process if it's a survey or a observational study. If it's an experiment, we want to incorporate random assignments into the experiment. All right, so again, different things you can do. Observational study, you're observing something that's already happening. So like I said, observing people's heights is something. So that's usually going to be an easier thing to do, but you're going to have to collect more data points. Same thing with the survey. You can make a survey and ask people to do it. Especially with technology now, that could be something that's really easy to do. You can make a survey on Google Forms and then just text it out to everybody, all your friends on your phone, and ask them to answer it. Or, which probably wouldn't be the best randomization, but you can make an online form and then randomly assign it to maybe people in your classes, have them pick numbers. All right, so think about how you can randomize your observational studies and the surveys, so you don't have any bias that you're including. And then for experiments, let's say you don't want to try to ask 50 people or whatever for your observational study or survey. You can do an experiment on your own, just like what we did with like the propellers, the helicopters way back I believe that was, way back in like October or November when we did that. So you can come up with some form of experiment that you can just do on your own, and that way it actually might spend less time than we're trying to get responses from different people. So yeah, make sure that you spend time on this proposal and answering all those different parts. Again, there's really only 3 parts to it, so you should have plenty of time in class, especially with it being a long period today because of testing, to finish this, and then email it to me at the latest by the beginning of next class. This will be a 100-point summative grade, so as long as you turn it in and fix any corrections I tell you to, then you're going to get 100. So easy summative grade. If you turn in today, I'll put it in. So if you need a little grade boost, then we'll boost up your grade a little bit for progress reports. And lastly, this last page is just the project rubric. I'll let you look through it. Again, it's going to be a summative worth 300 points, right? 3 summative grades. So it's really important that you're spending time going through this, being detailed on your responses. If you want to, you can send me the project before it's due. I'll give you feedback so you can make corrections before you turn in for your final draft on May the 6th, which is a Monday. If you have any questions today, just let me know, and make sure that you send the proposal by beginning that class beginning of class on Wednesday. Really, if you have any questions on this proposal, just send me an email and I'll have my email up all class and give you feedback on it.